and welcome to Creating in Color, sharing the creative endeavors of people of color. I'm your host, Kaybe, and today I'm joined with James Parris, a writer, director, and animator whose past projects include The Lion King, Pekin Blue, The Road to El Dorado, Shimmer and Shine, and Doug Unplugged, to list a few things. How are you today, James?
I'm doing good, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You are a writer, an animator, and a director. Mind going into detail on each of these?
Like, how much time do you have? That's the question. Yeah, I'm a weird kind of like multi-hyphenate Swiss Army knife of things. I'm a sort of a writer, director, visual effects, animation supervisor. I guess that would be like a slightly longer version of it, but that's too much of a mouthful for most people. But for many years, yes, I was primarily I was embedded in animation and visual effects. So I started my career. This is the quick version at Disney Feature Animation back before we knew it was the Renaissance. I started at the beginning of the Renaissance, and I stayed at the Mouse House for about most of the '90s, really, and pretty much at the beginning of the next millennium, I crossed over into CG VFX. My first gig being Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1, and then followed up with a lot of VFX projects on live action films. Two of the X-Men movies, I, Robot, Sorcerer's Apprentice, Riddick, Snakes on a Plane, yeah, Freddy versus Jason. Oh gosh, and but I should have started with this one though, because we got the Oscar for this one. Curious Case of Benjamin Button at Digital Domain. We got the VFX Oscar when that came out. And somewhere in between all that, though, I became possessed by this burning desire to tell my own stories. And so to that end, I've been writing my own features and series and developing my own intellectual property and directing shorts and music videos and just trying to get the things out of my head that are in my head, as well as helping other creators produce the things that are in their heads too. And that's me in a nutshell.
That's a lot. Very, very impressive. How did you get started in the animation industry?
Let's see. Oh gosh, yeah. Let's go all the way back. I really didn't start. I didn't come out of the womb saying, "Oh my God, I want to be an animator." That was like a sort of a pleasant diversion. I was an artist though. So by the way, I grew up in New York, and the focus there was illustration. I kind of wanted to grow up to be Frank Frazetta. The closest thing I thought about movies was like doing a movie poster. That was like, sure, I'll do posters for movies. So I went to the High School of Art and Design, which is a vocational high school in New York for art. And I followed that up by going to art college in Brooklyn at Pratt Institute, and drawing and painting. That was the gig back then. And but I happened to, while I was at Pratt, get into an internship at Disney Feature Animation, and that was kind of like that was the gateway drug. Up till that point, I was obsessed with trying to take a still image and put a lot of power in one image, in a painting and a drawing, and how much motion and energy can you get from that. And then through learning about the craft of animation, I learned that what's even more powerful than a powerful still image? A bunch of powerful moving images strung together at 24 frames per second. And then I realized, oh my gosh, not only do you get the power, you get the emotion, you can make the audience cry, laugh, all that stuff. I'm like, oh, I just became addicted to what you can do to an audience when you have them captive sitting in a seat in a dark room with a giant screen in front of them. So Disney was my gateway drug for sure.
Wow. Yeah, Disney will do that.
Disney will do that. And obviously timing I'm just a beneficiary of really lucky timing. I can't take credit for getting into the game at the beginning of the '90s. If I were getting in a little earlier, I would have missed that window, and if I got in too late, I would have missed that window, because that Disney Renaissance is a very fixed moment.
Yeah.
And I was just very fortunate that the time I was there was exactly when they were peaking.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy because you never know, but how wonderful. How wonderful is that?
Yeah. I mean, if we knew it at the time, we would have probably like soaked it up a lot more. There was this idea that was going to go on forever. I remember that feeling of like when I was assigned to the crew of Lion King, at the time, nobody thought that that was going to be what it was going to end up being, because all the real hype within the studio was centered around Pocahontas, which was also in development at the same time, and it had the big names attached to it. Well, at the time, Mel Gibson was kind of a big name, if you remember.
Yeah.
There was this time Mel Gibson was kind of like a thing. Yeah, we kind of sort of said, okay, I'll be on the animal movie, and yeah, it'll be fun. And who knew when it came out and dusted everybody in the box office? Sort of like we felt vindicated, like we are the big movie.
And you worked on the animation for young Simba, right?
Back then, like, everybody on a crew works on one character. You stay, and so young Simba was, and I was actually, if you recall, Disney Feature had 3 different studios. So during that entire time, I was actually at their Orlando, Florida studio, not their Burbank studio. I think most of the artists who they were recruiting from the East Coast, they kind of sent them there because it's like East Coast, so they had that studio, they had Burbank, and they also had one in Paris as well that they were cultivating to get European artists. And a lot of Tarzan, for example, was done at that Paris studio.
Wow. Just gotta say, young Simba's my favorite Simba.
Oh, well, he's my favorite too, actually, because come on, that's the one you're introduced to. He
was a kid like I was, so it was real fun.
Yes, exactly. And because obviously when we get into Act 3, then it's like all Hamlet, and now it's all serious.
Yeah, it gets less serious, and there's like fire for some reason, and
well, it's like everybody remembers Bambi as a kid. Very few people remember Bambi at the end of the movie when he's a grown deer or a buck, or whatever. Is it a buck that you call a grown deer?
Yeah.
A male is a buck,
it's
right?
A buck, because a doe's a female deer, buck, and fawn.
Yes, doe,
Fawn's baby.
Yes. Fawn's a baby. Everybody remembers Fawn Bambi, right? And nobody seems to ever remember, which I think actually is one of the most beautiful sequences in Bambi, when he comes back and he's a young man, so to speak, and he sees Faline, for the first time, and he's about to run to her. It's like, oh, hey, I had a crush on you, and then all of a sudden the rival male comes out of the bush, and all of a sudden, like, the entire palette changes, and you're like, oh no, this is a fight. this is testosterone. Like, these guys, they got bass in their voice now, and these 2 deers go at it. They're like fighting to the death. I don't know if anybody remembers that. This is in Bambi.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I guess I need to rewatch Bambi, because
Bambi has a scene where they're trying to kill each other over a girl.
Cool. Neat. Thanks, Bambi. It's kind of like, I really like Fox and the Hound a lot, but I can't watch it at a certain point. Like, I have to stop the movie. The further it gets too real, because like I start crying at the part, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Fox and the Hound, but I mean, like, if you haven't, like, why?
Yeah, sorry.
But the scene where he's like an adult and the
is it the
no
gun?
Not even that part. It's the part with his like human mom goes and abandons him in the forest, and like it's so sad, and I'm like starting to get really sad just thinking about it.
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it? Like, that's what storytelling is supposed to do. Like, the purpose of the whole film experience is to elicit emotion. It
works.
So, but I have to say, if you watch Bambi again, that fight scene, like, it's really well done. But you. By the time Bambi's grown up, or Simba's grown up, or anybody else has grown up, the problems take on different proportions. They're adult problems now. It's like, oh, mating is like a thing.
Yeah. It's less fun.
Yes.
To you, what does it mean to work in the animation industry?
Let's see. What does it mean to work in the animation industry? I mean, to a certain degree, the same thing it means in any other industry, which is make sure you pay the rent.
Yeah.
Because, working in any part of the entertainment industry, like, I have actor friends, I have editor friends, I have DP friends, or grip friends, or sound mixer friends, and I'm pretty sure we all have the same answer to that one, which is work. Because if you can't work, who cares about anything else? Because you're not paying your bills. You got to pay your bills. And sometimes, you can ask a lot of actors, sometimes you have to take a gig that pays your bills that isn't the gig you want, but you got to pay the rent sometimes, and I've done those for sure. And I've done lots of gigs that are not even animation related, or not even, it's not my craft. I've done craft services gigs.
Oh,
I've actually, yeah, which is that's a hard racket if you're doing it independently. Wow, it was a small production, but still, I had to, like, you got to charge all this food and stuff on your card, and then do all this transportation and setup and all that stuff, and keep everything refreshed, and then you get reimbursed after, plus your day rate.
oh, I don't like
uh,
that. I don't like that. Like with your card, you're spending money. Oh, I don't like that.
yeah, you get that back plus your rate after, but you have to have the money up front. It was one of those gigs I said yes to before I really thought it through. But you learn also with being craft services that you get to learn more about the cast and crew of any production as craft services, because people speak their mind when they're near the food. You know what I mean?
That's, yeah.
If there's a blow up, that somebody might just go and, like, immediately, I need some sugar or something to make me feel better. And then it's the same thing, like a makeup artist probably gets it too, that people get more intimate and they start talking to you as a makeup artist. But same, I think, to a certain degree, craft services as well. You hang around the food, you will hear stuff.
It's kind of like at a party. People usually like hang around the kitchen or the food or whatever.
Yes. The kitchen is where talking happens, right?
That's right.
And so, yeah, anyway, but working by any means necessary, pay the rent by any means necessary. And I know a lot of people who, like, have that very, I won't do anything unless it's the exact kind of work I want to do. It's to which I usually say, well, you haven't been hungry enough, like, yeah. Hunger will make you work. And paying the bills as well. So that would be my first in terms of advice. What does it mean working? You got to have an ethic that says, I got to pay the bills. Now, after you make sure you're paying your bills, then you can, and maybe concurrently, make sure you're developing all the things you want to develop. But you can't do it at the expense of a roof over your head or all those things. You got to be smart about the game.
Do you feel in order to be successful in this industry, you need to be an artist?
So in order to be successful in this industry, do you need to be an artist? Well, I guess the question is, successful at what? Because every facet of the industry isn't necessarily a facet that requires you to be an artist. I mean, again, like editor, sound designer, casting director, you don't have to be an artist to do those things. But there are lots of vital roles that aren't in my particular skill set that I couldn't do. But I think to be successful, you definitely have to be driven, and you can't be complacent. That's for sure. There are great qualities to have that are not necessarily tied to your talent. And if you have these and talent, then you're in a good place. And one of them is just simply be the kind of person somebody just wants to be standing next to for more than 2 minutes. Because if they're going to have to work with you all day and all week and overtime and long hours, play nice with the other kids. I know a lot of people who don't remember that lesson. I'd say sometimes, man, 60% play nice and 40% talent is better than 90% talent and only 10% nice.
Yeah.
I like to think I have talent, but I think I've gotten some gigs just because people were like, yeah, I know him, I like him. I don't know if you've seen the George Clooney Ocean's 11, the first one. There's that moment where I think is it Andy Garcia who plays the bad guy? Yeah, and he's telling him how he's going to sick some people on him, and like, I know people who can put a hurting on you and stuff, end your life or your career or whatever. And I remember it's like George Clooney looks at him, he's like, I know all the guys you're going to send after me. They like me better than you. I love that moment because, like, yes, he doesn't have all the money and he doesn't have the guns, but the guns he does have is the people like him. He has made himself so that even if you paid somebody to go kill him, they would refuse. And what's more powerful than that?
Yeah.
And I say, be the kind of person people want to work with. And then that might make up for, you might not be the best at every single thing, but people would be more willing to go out on a limb and just help you out a little bit if you're not, a very unlikable individual. And I say that goes like double if you're in a position of like power over others, because, I've witnessed a lot of irresponsibility with power. Let's just put it that way.
It's a very nice way of putting it. what does it mean to be an animator, writer, and director?
What does it mean to be an animator writer? Oh, in other words, like, what does it mean to do all of them simultaneously?
Yeah.
Like the juggling act. The juggling act, yeah, that's I do this to myself. It's masochistic, and I admit it. Well, first of all, animation is something that I'm very happy that it turns out that it's something I can do pretty well, right? And there is a market for what I do, and therefore I can have a career and pay the rent, so to speak. And the writer director part is the what I eventually learned that is more connected to the part of me that says, this thing that I'm thinking about, I want you to be thinking about it too. And so it bothers me at night. I'm thinking about a thing and I'll wake up and then like, okay, just give me a pen. Let me just start writing down some ideas because I have this, and I'll feel bad if I let that go and forget it and fall back asleep and lose the story. Falling in love with stories that come into your head is a weird process, and it then takes over all these little moments of your life that you didn't think it was going to take over. And then before you know it, you're prioritizing time to think about your story over, big things in life. And so I think one of the things that it means is that you're going to have to give up some other stuff that some people don't want to give up. You want to write a story, that's time that your brain needs to sort of marinate in the world that you're trying to create. You don't just flick a switch and suddenly your fingers start going and you're creating really vivid worlds and problems and people and personalities and backstories. Your brain needs time to just dwell on that stuff, which means, daydreaming.
Yeah.
So part of that other part of me, I have to enforce that I need time to daydream and just play in my mind, and to the rest of the world, that just looks like you're doing nothing. You're just sitting in a coffee shop staring. And I clock a lot of coffee shop time just daydreaming. But the good part about that daydreaming is I come out of those daydreaming sessions and then I'm scribbling and jotting or sketching or doing little things that are jumping out of the daydream. And then I go back home and I start piecing these things into like English and stuff. And before you know it, there's a cohesive idea here. And all of a sudden you're in a story and you're like, now I really got to get to the end of the story because I want this thing to work. And this is a great thing. I always thought it was crazy and they were lying when writers talk about, like getting to the point where you really care about your characters like they're really like they're people, mm-hmm. and you want to get them to a safe place. And now I understand, no, it is like having little babies. It's like I have a Google folder for every idea that I come up with that I think could be a story. And I create a Google folder with its own little internal structure so that I know my little spitballing goes here. My things, once I get to an outline, it's going to go in that folder. And then when I start a script, it's going to go in that folder. And each one of those folders with a name for that idea, they're like little baby chicks. They're like my little babies, my little birds that I have to feed. And then the more I really fall in love with a particular idea, that bird starts singing louder, like feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me. And then I start thinking about that bird. And then I have to go around. So basically, like, I'm feeding so many birds all the time. And when one bird, I think, okay, you're okay, right? I gotta go over and feed her. I'll be right back, I promise. Then I jump to this other story that I'm thinking about. And the good part about that is you're never bored. I mean, I hear people say, I'm bored. I look at them, I'm like, what does that word even mean? Well, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you're thinking it means. But I don't know what boredom feels like because there's just too many potential stories to be told and too much in the world and too much. I don't know. I'm very, call me just a geek, but I just think the world is full of too much wonder and possibilities for you to ever be bored.
Wow. I like that. Now, something I've heard, walking this crazy plane we call life. I heard that you shouldn't fall in love with your stories. Do you feel the same way about that? You shouldn't fall in love with your stories. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think life is short. So why not fall in love with your stories? I mean, if you're not falling in love with your stories, you can do both. I can fall in love with my stories and your stories and his stories and Steven Spielberg's stories and David Mamet's stories and David Fincher's stories and, whatever. I think to see something through to the end, there's a lot of energy that you have to put into a story too. Like I just even on making a short film, like I've made short films, and like one particular story, I made an animated short film called Pink and Blue. It's about gender conditioning and kids' toys, and from a toys perspective, it's like little CG toys living in gender apartheid in a house, right? And it's like a 6.5 minute thing, but it took years to finish. If you don't fall in love with something like that, you will not finish it. You will just get tired of all the problems and the obstacles, and you'll set it down and it'll be a half finished piece of art that you could probably count 1 million people who have like things they started and didn't finish. 9 times out of 10, the reason you did not finish it, you didn't love it enough to finish it.
You got to love the thing, and that love for the thing will push you past the stupid thing that happened where the thing that you thought you could count on fell out, or you ran out of money and you couldn't do that, and then this thing broke, and now now I'm back to square one. And that's usually when people are like, never mind, it wasn't meant to be, but you don't do that if you love that thing. So the love gives you the energy, and the energy then pushes you past those obstacles, because this is not a thing where you just zip, do a sketch, and then you're done with your piece like you can do if you're just drawing. Filmmaking, making any kind, even short filmmaking, requires long-term commitment to the thing. So I think falling in love with the project is exactly what you want to do. Now, hopefully you fall in love with the project that actually is a good idea. So I try to be very realistic about, like, I have lots of ideas that I come up with, but I try to, I make that folder and I call it something and I dwell on it. And if I keep coming back to it and I know that thing has captivated my mind and I can see the movie or see the whatever, then I know it's like something I would buy a ticket to see, or I would want to subscribe to watch that series, Then I know it's something I would actually want to give my money. Then I start falling in love with it more. But if I lose my own interest in it before I even get off the block, then I'm like, that was an idea. It was half an idea. It was half baked. Let it simmer over here on the side. I'm not going to really commit that much to it. But there's some things that I just know. I see it. I just see it. I see it. It'll be so awesome when I can give this to the world. And when I know that's the case, absolutely, I'm going to fall in love with it. Because guess what? At some point, whether it be an independent film or a TV series, you're going to have to walk into somebody else who you don't know and convince them that it is worth them putting money into. And nobody wants to put money into something that you don't feel confident about. Therefore, you must love it. If I'm going to pitch you right now, if you're a financier for an independent film, or if you're a network executive, I'm going to bring all my love into the room with me. Because another thing, if you are actually you're forking over millions of dollars. Imagine you're betting on a horse and you got to walk behind the stables and see the horses before the race. And you got to see, you see this horse that's kind of just looks like, I just lost my will to live. And then this other horse is just distracted by the world around it. But then there's this one horse that's just it's just let me out of here. I gotta run. It's just clawing at the ground. I'm putting my money on that horse. That horse looks like it wants to run. That horse looks like it'll run the hell out of this joint. And you want to bet your money on people with energy, on people who actually give a damn about what they're doing. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to be the guy who's just going through the motions and going, I'm in the industry and I don't really care about anything. I just want to, even though I just said, yes, you have to make a paycheck. But when it comes to your own babies, the things that you're creating, I think you got to fall in love. And that love is going to not only take you through so you can see it through the end, but it's also going to convince other people that maybe they should get down with this project, and that oh, wow, you really do care about it. And maybe you're the horse I bet on. I always want people to think that I'm the horse that's going to win, because I just want to get out the gate. Just open the gate. Let me do it. Damn it. I mean, those are the kind of people I gravitate towards, because I think they got enough gas in the tank to race the whole, I'm mixing my metaphors like horse and race car, but you know what I mean? I want your horse should have enough gas in the tank is what I'm saying.
So on that note, just to be this person, what if you end up loving your project too much? Because I feel like I fall guilty to this sometimes, where I get super hyped up on a project and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. And then I start overthinking it so much to the point where I start making myself anxious or scared, or I just shut down. And I say, I'm not ready for this project. I can't step up to this project.
Okay. So to me, that doesn't sound like love. That sounds like fear.
Oh.
That sounds like, well, put it this way, I had a similar conversation with a friend of mine the other day about something. Oh, and I use this, another weird animal analogy.
Let's do it.
So let's just say you had a daughter, and you're out hiking in the woods, and all of a sudden you wandered away, and she's maybe 100 yards away from you, but you turn around and you see a bear coming right for your kid, right? Do you say, well, I'm probably too small to take on a bear, so yeah, my kid's probably going to die and get eaten, so all right, I might as well just start going home now, right? No, even despite the odds, any mother is going to be like, I'd rather sacrifice my life. I'm going, and she's going to do everything. She's going to yell at the top of her lungs and go right at the bear, even if it means she's going to die, to try to put herself between the bear and her kid, right? Logic goes out the window when a mother's protecting their kid, my mother, to this day, will take on anybody, you know what I mean? And she's almost 90. So, I think that kind of the mother child logic is that fear goes out the window, and it's all about making sure the kid's okay. So that means that the mother doesn't have all that time to start worrying about this bear situation and get bogged down with the fear and the worry. And does that make me a bad mother that I let my kid wander away that far, and now the bear's going to eat her, and what are they going to say when I get home, and all these what ifs about how it's not going to turn out right. There's only one thing: I'm going to kill that bear. And who knows, just the act of running at the bear with screaming at the top of your lungs might deter the bear, you know? And I think, you know, we're artists, first of all. Listen, we're all afraid. To this day, I mean, I've been drawing pictures my whole life. To this day, I always sometimes think, can I do this? You know, I pick up a pencil or whatever. You're your own worst critic, always, of course. And we have to fight against that to some degree, because if you just sit there and criticize yourself to death before you do anything, you will criticize yourself into the grave and never have made anything. You know, like, I don't know if you know, do you know that parable, the little thing about the pottery teacher with the class, and he split the class in half, and one half of the class, he said, okay, you have one assignment for the whole year. You all have to come together and you have to collectively make the perfect vase. You got to work as a team and make the perfect vase, and I need that by the end of the year. And then the other half of the class, he said, you have a different assignment. You guys, you have to make as many vases as you can. Doesn't matter what they look like, I don't care. So then just go forth. And so the first half of the class spent the entire year arguing, worrying, and debating about what a perfect vase would even look like. None of them could agree on it. By the time the year was over, they had not made anything, and they failed the class. Other half of the class, free of that whole notion of perfection, started just making stuff, just left and right. They made like 10 vases a day. They experimented, and some of the experiments were yucky, and yeah, they throw them out, but they learned from those, and then they took those lessons and made better vases. And by the end of the year, they had a whole gallery full of the most exquisite vases you've ever seen. Partially accidents, partially because they planned it, and partially just because they learned as they went along. And they were not hampered by this idea of we have to make this one perfect thing. And of course, they got a great grade in the class. So I think I want to be more like that second class, you know? Mm-hmm. And yes, there are going to be some things you make that aren't the best, but how do you think you're going to get to the good stuff? You think you're going to just sit there and the good stuff's going to manifest out of whatever? No, you're going to have to make some vases that suck. I've made some short films that I'm not going to show to anybody because they suck. That's fine, but I learned a lot from that short film that sucks. And now, because I learned that, I'm going to make the short film that sucks a whole lot less. As a matter of fact, when I'm even when I'm animating, you know, that's or storyboarding or whatever, that's my motto that I say to myself. I do one iteration of a thing and I say, okay, cool. Next pass, make it suck less. And that's what I always say to myself: make it suck less, make it suck less, make it suck less. Because I guarantee you do that to anything, you apply make it suck less to anything, your next iteration is going to be better than that. And then say it again, make it suck less. Boom, it gets a little better. Say it again, make it suck less. Boom, it gets a little better. You do that a million times, the thing's going to suck a lot less than when you started. And to me, that's writing, that's animation, that's film, that's pottery, that's dance, that's the violin, that's anything creative. Make it suck less. And the way you do that is put in the time, you put in the practice, you put in the iteration. And that also takes out the fear part of worrying about how it's going to turn out. Worry does not put your hands on the clay. Worry just immobilizes you. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've ever read The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield's book. Mm-hmm. It's geared towards screenwriters, but he has, you know, the War of Art and then his sequel, Turning Pro. As a matter of fact, I highly recommend those books. They're great. You could read them in a day. But also there's a great video essay based on those books, and you can just find it on YouTube. It's called How to Be Creative, How an Artist Turns Pro. And it's, I think the YouTube channel is called Storytellers. And it's a great, I mean, he encapsulates basically everything in Stephen Pressfield's book in this video essay. And, you know, his book is all about overcoming what he calls resistance. And resistance, in his words, are just all those things combined that effectually make you stop working on your thing. No matter what your excuse is outwardly, come up with any excuse you want. It really just comes down to resistance. You're not going to do it. Or in physics, you would call it inertia. You know, an object at rest
stays in rest.
You know,
yeah,
right. So you need to be the object that says, screw rest, I need motion. Mm-hmm. And the way you got to get motion is there has to be energy there. Well, where's that energy coming from? You have to create energy to push the rock forward. That's up to you, you know, and fear and like, oh my God, am I good at all or whatever, that's going to be the opposite. That's going to keep you at rest. So real love, if you really fall in love with your project, you are afraid of it never being made. You're afraid that nobody will ever see this wonderful thing that I got inside me. And I got to have people seeing this wonderful thing inside me. Now, if you're saying, well, is it really that wonderful though? Is it really? Okay, maybe it's a little bit of wonderful. Go learn more that you need to learn to help it get to be more wonderful. It's like, what do you think is find somebody you trust who's really good at what they do, who you like their work. If you're an animator, find an animator you trust who does really good work, who you think they can communicate to you, hey, how can you make that thing better? Or if it's a story you're working on, find a writer who has done good work. And I always say, don't find a wannabe, find somebody who actually has done it. Because lots of people talk to wannabes about stuff, and wannabes don't know any more than you do. Go to somebody with a resume and ask them who's actually done the work and who's actually made something that doesn't suck. Because then they can give you their experience of like, oh, when I have a thing at this stage, this is what I tend to do anatomically. And then I go back and I got to build this up. And what you need is this piece, you know what I mean? As opposed to just your buddy who just has an opinion. And the old saying, opinions are like assholes, right? So you gotta find somebody with the experience in their hands who has done the work and who can fight past that. Oh, I'm frustrated with the stage it's in right now. Who can get past that? Because that's the war of art, is getting past that. Oh, I can't take it forward. To quote Rocky and Rocky Balboa, it's not about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done, and that's, he's giving that big monologue to his son.
Mm-hmm.
But Rocky's not wrong. It is about how much you can take and still move forward. You gotta be able to, and sometimes the worst punches get thrown by yourself, by that other stupid little voice inside your head that says you're no good, that says, oh, who am I fooling? I'm a fraud. I'm not as good as all those people who, what's that old poem by Marianne Williamson? Like we say, who am I to be brilliant, fabulous, talented, but who are you not to be? You're playing small does not serve the world. So I say, don't play small. First of all, you got one life to live. And it's a short one. We're all like little blips on this thing, on this planet. So why waste your time doubting yourself? Even if you fail spectacularly, fail like a diva, fail fabulously, and then do it again.
I love that.
Because who cares? Because really, who cares? 5,000 years from now, is anybody going to be worrying about your failure? But you might make something that in 5,000 years might still be around. Does anybody care about the things that Hitchcock didn't get right?
Yeah.
And you think any artist who you appreciate, whose work you admire, you think they don't doubt themselves? Of course they do. They just keep going after the doubt. They just keep punching. Isn't that the whole point of Rocky, by the way? Like that, at least the first two movies, is that he's just like willing to just keep trying to pull himself up off the floor.
Yeah.
Like the big winning moments are just pulling yourself off the floor. That's all. That's the way Rocky wins in those movies, right? Well, he didn't win in the first one. He just made it to his feet, right?
He won for himself.
Yes. But he did win the actual fight in the second, in Rocky 2.
Yeah.
But in both of those cases, it's the same thing. It's like, can you outlast your own pain and fear, and you're bloody and you're swollen, and you know what I mean? Like, it's never this clean, I waltz into the ring and then bap, 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 he goes down. All the Rockies are like, oh, just anguish all the way to the last minute. And then it's like a guy counting 1, 2, 3, 4,
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, that's creating. That is creating right there. It is like you're always bloody and swollen at the end. But if you can get to that bloody, swollen place and last until the guy says 8, 9, and get on your feet, you will have finished your project. And I've been there. I know the feeling. And it's just like, you don't even want to celebrate because you're too busy bleeding. You just need a nap. But later, after you take a nap, you can get up and say, you know what? I finished what I started. I finished my project. You know what? I'm going to pat myself on the back. Pour myself a glass of wine. But you have to earn that wine. You have to earn it by staying with the project. So also another thing, and I know I'm beating this like with a stick, but sometimes you take on something that's too big for where you're at right now. Like you don't have the resources to do it. And like, hey, I got this idea that it's going to have like 1 million aliens, attacking the White House with the blah, blah. Like, okay, maybe that short film is not the one you do right now. Maybe you do the short film about the potato in the kitchen. Or then find a way to make a simpler thing still, elicit my emotion with a simple setup, a drama that can be shot in the house or shot in a couple of houses or whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's animation, for example, can I put a crew together to help me do this? Well, okay, if you have a big idea, you're going to need a crew. And I know from experience, sometimes you have to be like an HR department. You got to be a recruiting department. You have to now go and Ocean's 11 it. You know, you got to go get Brad Pitt and Matt Damon and Don Cheadle together. And that means you have to be able to pitch your friends as to why they should give their free time to help you make your thing. By the way, I am a big believer in us helping each other out, because I've done short films with, I get by with a little help from my friends. You know, it's real. But all my friends know that if they ask me to help, I will help them right back. The reciprocity is absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'm always telling all my friends, go make your stuff. I will help you, but create your own stuff. Let's all make our own stuff. Because if we're all making stuff, if we're all pitching shows, if we're all, I mean, even just the law of averages, only 10% of us get our stuff made. That's 10% of all of us. Why not? Why not go for it? And then those 10% can get to the penthouse and then send the elevator back down. And help the rest of us, you know?
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Sure.
Very inspirational. Good info. And I literally just talked to someone about career struggles, and then she was just like, what are you waiting for? And I was just like, I don't know. And then you're over here just like, just do it.
Well, I mean, you know, sometimes you got to know who the enemy is. So it's like, you know, if inertia is my enemy, if resistance is the enemy, you know, I'm just plugging Stephen Pressfield's book for him. So you're welcome, Mr. Pressfield. But I think it's just a scientific principle. When you're standing still, you want to stay still because it's comfortable not to start moving in that direction. Also, if you're going into the unknown, it's uncomfortable going into the unknown, right?
Yeah.
So it's sometimes it's not that easy to just say, just get up and do it and just start moving, because fighting all that stuff, you have to acknowledge it first. You have to say, yeah, I'm afraid. Okay, now you said it. And you know the old saying, feel the fear, do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to practice the art of moving while afraid, because not everybody does it. It's our nature. It's our ancestors passed this gene, is when you're afraid, you freeze, right? Like a deer, right? and you hide, and you go inside something that's very small and cozy, like a little burrow, and you hide, and you make sure, you know, that's our natural instinct is, I'm afraid, let me go somewhere safe where I can't be hurt. But when you're afraid of creating something, you got to go against that instinct and say, no, I'm afraid, but I got to go out there and do it, put myself on the line, be vulnerable, tell everybody I have an idea. And you know, the moment you say I have this idea, everybody's looking now, and then we're like, oh wait, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Now everybody's looking at me, and oh no, what if it sucks? And everybody's gonna look at me and they're gonna know it sucks. Oh. Yeah, what if they do? What if people do say it sucks? Well, take a look at it, and if you really, really agree with them, make it suck less, and then go and do it. Anything that sucks can suck less. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
There's no story you could say, right? Like you could make up a story right now on the spot. There's nothing you could say that couldn't be massaged if we spend some time massaging it and maybe make this happen instead of that, change that for this, combine these two characters into one, you know, that we can't find something in there that's a story worth telling. You just have to want to do it. But a lot of people don't want to spend that time. Let's be honest. A lot of people want the success like Pop-Tarts. They want to put the thing in, press the thing down, and in 2 minutes, boom, pop comes your success. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But success ain't Pop-Tarts. It's more like a, what do you call it? What's something that takes a long? It's like a
cake.
Like you're baking like a giant 7-layer cake, and you from scratch all day. You're making your own flour. You got cows. You got to churn the butter yourself. You know. And it's more like that, you know, and you're whipping the cream yourself, and you know, and if you're not willing to put that time in, then maybe you really don't want to do that thing that you said you wanted to do. Now the question, it's okay to say I'm scared, but don't say that. I'd appreciate it if you just say I'm afraid. Then we know how to work with that. Okay, we can get past fear, but you still got to want to do it though. Yeah. You know. I don't know if what I'm saying has any relevance to what you're asking.
I liked it. You also answered one of the questions already.
Oh yeah, what was that one?
Well, I'll ask you the question again, but it was a Roblox question.
Oh, Roblox. What are Roblox? Oh, well, I mean, you know, that's going to be different Roblox for different folks, right? But you know, like there is one big roadblock that I've, you know, that's gotten in my way in the past, and that's not fear, but like complacency. You know, like that kind of feeling that, well, you got a little something, maybe just stop here and just enjoy this and not try to do any more than this, because, you know, like a couple of people pat you on the back for achieving this thing, and even though you said you wanted this other thing, which is way higher than this thing, but people are really giving you pats on the back for this thing. So maybe this is your level. Maybe you should stop here and just cash in your chips, you know? And I think that is a roadblock. You know, actually, funny, Stephen Pressfield kind of talks about that a little bit too in War of Art. But he calls it, shadow career. Yeah, the shadow career. He basically says a lot of people, they want to do, you know, make up a career, but they want to do this thing, but they settle for this other job or this other career path that is sort of kind of like the thing they want to do, and it's easier, so they can convince themselves that that easier thing is the thing they really wanted to do all along, and then they don't try to do the more difficult thing, which is really more aligned with what they really desire deep down. So like what's his face, Quentin Tarantino I remember hearing an interview with him, and he mentioned that working in a video store, which is, you know, famously where he began, right? And he said, you know, I worked with some great people, and if I didn't have the artist soul burning within me that he had, you know, he could have been satisfied with just that, you know, being a big fish in a puddle, as he says, you know. And he could have convinced himself that that was him. Like, he's like the grandmaster of video rental guys who knows everything about all the movies, and, you know, everybody says, wow, that guy knows everything about movies, and you want to go rent from him, you know, whatever. But he's like, that's not what his artist soul was saying that he needs to do. The artist soul was saying, I need to make my own movies, and that is going to be more difficult. And you know, according to Quentin, he also likens it to, what does he call it? Well, he calls it being in Loserville, I think is what he says. And he says one of the things you have to do is get out of Loserville if you really want to make it. And what he means by Loserville is that he was, I guess he's sort of calling some of his old friends losers, but not in the derogatory sense of you're a loser. I think what he was talking about was like, he had a metaphor about running in the 100-yard dash, like as a track person. And if you run with people who are slower than you and race them all the time, you will always win. But if you run with people who are faster than you, you may not ever win, but your time will be better than if you had run with the slower people, because the faster people will motivate you to dig deeper and run faster. The people who are farther ahead of you are much better motivation in life than the people who are farther behind you. So, and I think, quoting Quentin again, he wants to always be the weak link in his chain, you know? And I absolutely agree. I want to be the weak link in my chain. I'm looking for people who know more than I do. I'm looking to learn. I'm looking to catch up to people farther down the road than me. And a lot of what that does also is that handles that whole stupid fear thing about like, oh, what if I don't, you know, because those people are too busy doing to worry about your little fear. If you look at them, you're like suddenly want to catch up. And now you're like, I always say, you know, there's fear is something we're born with. It's, you know, we have an amygdala, which is, you know, the part of the brain that develops first. That was the first part to evolve, which is fight or flight, basic instincts of fear, aggression, whatever. Eat, sleep, mate, fight. That's what our ancestors did, right? However, you notice the first verb I used wasn't fight or flight. What was the first verb I just said out of those four?
Eat.
Yes. There is a primal instinct that is more powerful than fear, and that is hunger. If you are hungry enough for anything, that hunger can override the fear. So if like there's an animal that hasn't eaten for days, and there's a piece of food and there's another animal about to get it, that animal will fight to the death to get that piece of food because he is starving or she is starving. And if you are hungry enough for a thing, that hunger will allow you to move past your fear to go after that thing. But you got to be hungry though. And if you don't have the hunger, the fear is going to be more powerful. So I say, cultivate the hunger. and all of a sudden you'll realize you don't have enough free time at all because all your time is spent going after that morsel of food. You know. You know who you will be? You'll be Wile E. Coyote. Because Wile E. Coyote, it doesn't matter how many times the contraption doesn't work. What does Wile E. Coyote do? And by the way, Wile E. Coyote, like, that's a role model. You know, yes, Roadrunner's the star of the show, but Wile E. Coyote is the real lesson here. Don't be depressed because you didn't get him and whatever. He's like, nope, next contraption. He's right back on the road. This rocket thing is gonna work, definitely. I'm gonna tie a rocket to my back. Nope. Okay, I blew myself up. Okay, wait, I got another one. He's always back at the blueprint, the drawing board. Actually, Wile E. Coyote is my hero. He does not give up, and he does not let failure just immobilize him.
Yeah.
He's a freaking hero.
He's a certified genius, according to his business card.
Yes. Super genius. I love that one. Chuck Jones, man, the genius.
Yeah, very good stuff. Love it. Hi, everybody. This episode is a little long, so this will be a part 1. Tune in next time for part 2 with our conversation with James. Thank you so much to the listener for tuning in. Please follow Creating in Color on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to submit any questions for upcoming guests through our social media or creatingincolorcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in following me, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitch.tv at Maybe It's Kaybe. Thanks to Namikaze for creating the ending theme. You can find more of his music on his SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Namikaze. That's Namikaze. Thank you so much to everyone who's been sharing Creative in Color with their friends, your family, and your coworkers. We are a new podcast, so I do truly appreciate any word of mouth or helping to push our hashtag on social media, #CreatingInColorcast. There are no departing words of wisdom for this episode, so you gotta tune in for part 2 for some words of wisdom. But thank you so much, and this has been Creating in Color. Keep striving, keep trying, keep creating. Bye.